Hello, I'm Ben Wattenberg. This week on Think Tank, we look at nuclear power and political power. They are powerfully linked. In the early days, when visionaries were talking of energy too cheap to meter, the government was a big player in developing peacetime uses for nuclear energy. Later, when the fission hit the fan at 3 Mile Island, environmentalists fueled a major argument about the safety of nuclear power, and a variety of federal, state, and local governments and the courts and regulatory agencies started pulling the plug. Now, with the argument about global warming heating up and planners looking for cleaner power, we ask, is nuclear power too clean to fail? Joining us to sort through the conflict and the consensus are Dale Klein, a professor of engineering at the University of Texas and energy advisor to the federal government and the government of the state of Texas; Arjun Makhijani, president of the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research; and Victor Gilinsky, a former commissioner of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and now a consultant in the energy field. The topic before the House: nuclear power to the people? Question mark. An offspring of the atomic bomb, nuclear power was hailed as a cleaner source of power. And it is. Compared to other major sources of energy, it gives off virtually no pollutants, including those infamous greenhouse gases that allegedly will dangerously warm the Earth. The United States now has 110 nuclear power plants, which provide 18% of American energy consumption, with the rest provided principally by coal and natural gas. But accidents such as the non-fatal one at 3 Mile Island in 1979 and the massive and very fatal Chernobyl disaster of 1986 have led many to question the safety of the industry. The incident at 3 Mile Island caused an intense outcry against nuclear power, coming from many environmental groups and such national figures as Jane Fonda, Jerry Brown, and Ralph Nader.
If the corporation's government here does not become the people's government and stop atomic power, are you coming back in greater numbers again? Again, until we stop nuclear power, again.
Costs of nuclear power were in part driven up by safety concerns and new regulations to deal with legitimate concerns. Since 3 Mile Island, no new nuclear plants have been built in America. But as nuclear energy use declined in the United States, it boomed abroad. In 1980, I traveled to France to document their blossoming nuclear industry for a PBS special on nuclear energy.
This may look like the poor man's version of the set of the China Syndrome. Actually, is a key part of the French reprocessing plant at La Hague.
Since 1980, the use of nuclear power has grown throughout Europe and Asia. Environmentally conscientious countries such as Sweden and Switzerland get about half of their power from nuclear sources. The figure in France is near 80%. In the United States, with nuclear expansion on hold, the industry has focused on exports and safety. Billions have been spent on the safe transportation of nuclear waste and for permanent storage sites for spent nuclear fuel, such as the massive and controversial Yucca Mountain Storage Depot. Can nuclear power come back in the United States? Concerns about global warming have brought the nuclear debate to the forefront again.
We actually see a pretty bright future for nuclear energy as we go forward in this country, and there's two real primary reasons for that. First of all, as we deregulate electricity in this country, people are realizing the important role that nuclear plays in our electricity supply. It's our second largest source of electricity, and as you look forward, it's probably our most stable, most cost-competitive long-term supply of electricity. The second thing are the issues we've been talking about, the environmental issues. Not only to satisfy any global climate change commitments we make will we need nuclear, but to satisfy our current Clean Air Act requirements, which put constraints on emissions of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Nuclear plays a major role in our country in satisfying those.
America's chief negotiator of the Kyoto Treaty, Undersecretary of State Stuart Eizenstat, recently said, "I believe very firmly that nuclear has to be a significant part of our energy future and a large part of the Western world if we're going to meet these Kyoto emission reduction targets. Those who think we can accomplish these goals without a significant nuclear industry, I think, are simply mistaken." Environmental groups such as Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth went ballistic at Eisenstat's comment. They demanded that President Clinton issue an immediate retraction. Their letter stated that it would be morally irresponsible to trade reduced greenhouse gas emissions today for an increased legacy of risk and radioactive waste that will plague generations to come. And we've talked to the White House and they said they don't have any comment. We've talked to Eisenstat's office. They don't have any comment. Let's put that fact on the table. Here's a very serious guy, been in government a long time, basically the point man on the American negotiating position, and he is saying you can't meet these targets without a big dose of nuclear energy. Let's just go around the room quickly for a fast comment on that, and then we'll pick it up. Arjun.
I think it's not a question about retractions. I think it's a question about facts and analysis. Now, I've done the analysis, and I think if you start with the premise that the dollars are limited, that government and private corporations and people are going to have to put some money into preventing rise in temperatures or reducing accumulations of greenhouse gases, what should be done? That's the question. And in that context, is nuclear power useful or is it not useful? And the very clear conclusion is, if you look at the dollars and cents, nuclear power is not useful because it's very expensive. And this is not even taking into account any of the proliferation problems or accidents or government-supplied insurance or anything like that.
Victor?
Well, I mean, can't be excluded is not a very strong statement. The fact is we rely on nuclear power to a pretty significant extent around the world for electricity. I mean, about, I don't know, 15% of the world's electricity in the United States, over 20, comes from nuclear power plants, and we're going to be doing that for some time. And it obviously forms an important component of our electricity supply. I don't know the details about whether or not that's absolutely required to meet the targets or not, but it's something we have. It's an important part of our energy supply.
Nuclear power is safe, it's economical, and if we are to meet our global reductions in CO2, nuclear power will have to play a significant role.
Okay, we're going to stipulate for a while that there is global warming, and it's real, and it's scientifically backed up. I'm not sure I believe that. Maybe we'll come back to that. But for the moment, let's stipulate that this global warming is a real problem. Now, you two gentlemen, Victor's sort of in the middle, appropriately so, but you two gentlemen are saying diametrically opposite things. Is that correct?
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Now, you have come out, Arjun, and said that we should phase out nuclear power entirely.
Yes.
Now, nuclear power does not emit greenhouse gases.
As a first approximation, you can say that. I think there are two separate problems involved which are getting confused. Nuclear power can't be switched off overnight, and I think this is where some environmentalists get confused about their own stand, and I think the environmental side should be clearer.
But why should, if it is greenhouse gas free, right, why should we phase it out at all? I mean, that is... The
question is, electric power plants do come to the end of their lives. And the question is, what should the new money be put in? Okay. If you look at where the market is not ordering new nuclear power plants and hasn't since 1978.
When you look at the greenhouse gas emissions, I agree with you, Ben, is that it's not clear whether global warming is real or not real. But there has been a policy decision made worldwide and in the United States that we will reduce CO2 emissions. When you look at all the Western countries, United States, any country that has reduced their CO2 emissions have done it through the use of nuclear power. When you look at our economy, we're moving towards more and more of an electrical economy. Just the mention of high tech means electricity, computers. So as our economy grows, as the youth of today need to get future jobs and we need to keep ours, then we will become more and more electrified worldwide as our countries grow. Nuclear power will play a role in that. It has to play a role in it.
Now, but you want it to play an increased role.
Absolutely.
And,
The reason,
are
and
you
the
going
reason,
to, are you
the
going to
reason
ask for
that,
government money to build nuclear power plants or not?
If you
think
look at the reductions in global warming that we've had, for example, since 1973, we've reduced over 2 billion metric tons of CO2 emissions in the United States by the use of nuclear power. There are a lot of things that we have done to make nuclear power more cost competitive. We've enhanced safety. The capacity factors have gone up. And so I think there's a good story to tell about nuclear power. And the reason for it, it provides something that we need, and that is electricity.
Well, I mean, Dale is right. People have learned how to use this stuff better, and it runs better, and so on. And we could undoubtedly make better ones if we built them today than the ones we have. But they're still far more expensive than anything else. And they just don't make it in the commercial, in the marketplace. And they're not going to for quite a long time. I don't think anyone in the business of generating electricity is taking that seriously, at least not in the United States. The places in the world where it's a closer call are where natural gas is unavailable, where pipeline gas is unavailable. And that turns out to be Asia, Japan, Korea, China, and so on.
If we talk about other countries, for the vast majority of countries, nuclear power is completely irrelevant because they're small countries.
Well, France has 75%.
France is a large country
yeah, right.
with a large economy. Most countries have populations of a few million that don't have very big electricity grids. In all of those countries, in almost all of Africa, for example, in much of Latin America, in much of Asia even, and in much of Europe, new nuclear power plants are not suitable for their grids because their grids are too small, and you stick a 1,000 megawatt or a 500 megawatt plant on it. A big coal-fired plant isn't very good for them either. For the best reliability, and many of these countries have electric reliability problems, you should have smaller unit sizes. The thing that is in short supply in all of these countries is foreign exchange and capital. And new nuclear power plants are very intensive on both these things.
Aren't the nuclear engineers now doing just what Arjun suggested, building smaller nuclear plants?
Yes, if you look, for example, Westinghouse has come out with the standard 600 megawatt standardized plant. And I think when you look, for example, in the global economy, as countries in South America and certainly China, as their economies grow, and they need more and more electricity, nuclear needs to play a role in that if we are concerned about global warming.
Okay, next question.
The natural gas is actually, let me just address what Mr. Gilinsky said. Natural gas is actually better than nuclear, even though it sounds counterintuitive, if you have a fixed amount of dollars. Because nuclear is so expensive, natural gas, if you use natural gas to displace coal-fired power plants as they retire, and if you compare that to using nuclear to displace coal-fired power plants, even though nuclear has 0 emissions and natural gas has some emissions, for a fixed amount of dollars, natural gas power plants will reduce CO2 emissions by 40% more than nuclear.
Well, on the economic side, Ben, I think if you look at the facts, you'll find out that right now on the production costs, that nuclear power generates electricity at about 1.9 cents per kilowatt hour, coal at about 1.8, and natural gas at 2.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So on economics, on the operation and maintenance of the plant, once the plants are built, they are very competitive. And for example, I don't believe that Japan, France, and other countries build those kind of plants because they like to throw away money. They do it because they need diverse energy sources. I don't believe we want all of our energy eggs in any one basket. We don't want to have only coal, only natural gas, only nuclear. We need an energy mix.
Is it safe?
nuclear power is absolutely safe. It is not risk-free, but it is safe, and the record speaks for that. For example,
You know, there's a certain amount of mumbo-jumbo about this.
Absolutely safe and not risk-free is a contradiction in one sentence.
I think
there's no nuclear power plant design that exists today has a zero probability of a Chernobyl-scale accident. What is at issue is how probable is it? In unsafe plants where there's less regulation, as for instance in Russia, it's more probable. Here it is less probable.
In the United
but
States,
it can happen here.
In the United States, what is the probability of a Chernobyl-style accident given our current plans?
We don't know how to put a figure on that probability because nuclear power plants are so complex and all of the accidents have been big accidents have been quite different. So it's very hard to project. But Commissioner Asselstein of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission after the Chernobyl accident said, if we maintain the record of safety that we have now, that is as of 1986, we should expect a nuclear accident of the Chernobyl scale every 20 years. Now, maybe he's wrong. That's his opinion. It's not mine.
I don't think
just
look at the different way we talk about nuclear power than say about airplanes. You say, are airplanes safe? And you'd immediately say, it depends how you fly them. And if you've got competent pilots and good procedures and so on, then they're safe. And the same way with nuclear energy. I think it's a little worrisome that people feel like there's a sort of a mantra. You have to say, you know, it's safe, so people will go along with it. I think safety, first of all, we only talk about things being safe if they're intrinsically dangerous, which both airplanes and nuclear power is. If we stick to the rules, if we're careful, it's safe. And the whole thing that's important here is the discipline.
Has any American ever been killed in an accident concerning nuclear energy production?
I don't think in a nuclear energy production, I think the answer is no. Although there have been some workers killed and things.
They have not. And Arjun is not being quite honest when he says Chernobyl accidents. The Chernobyl reactor is a unique type of reactor. No containment. It has an inherent instability. And so to sort of give a broad sweep of nuclear power in Chernobyl is academically dishonest because our reactors have containments. And as Victor says, that you do have to operate them safely, you have to maintain them. That's why the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has programs to enhance and to encourage safe operation.
I don't know about academia. I'm not in academia, but I will defend my honesty.
Yes,
what I did say is, we'll leave academia aside for now. That's a different show. The Chernobyl scale accidents of the scale of radioactivity release of Chernobyl are possible with light water reactors. They are different designs, but similar scale releases of radioactivity are possible, and I was not quoting my own opinion. I didn't give my own opinion of probabilities because I don't know. I don't know how to calculate it because I think we can't make a reasonable calculation. I was quoting Commissioner Asselstein's opinion of Chernobyl scale accidents.
Right, but that was an opinion issued a dozen years ago, and it did not necessarily refer to the United States.
It referred to the United States.
The important thing is that we don't become complacent about these things. I mean, we're doing very well. We're doing better. Almost all the plants are doing much better. People know the equipment much better, understand the problems much better. But I think it's important to keep it up. And the reason I make this point...
Is it safer than any other technology? Because there have been deaths in other energy technology. As you see,
it's hard to compare because you're comparing a sort of a certain level of accidents in other technologies with the possibility that you might get a sort of a terrible accident, although you haven't had one in this country. The reason I make the point about it's important not to get complacent is, we're moving into sort of restructuring of the whole electricity system and going to a much more competitive basis. And finances are going to play a much more important role in decisions at these plants. So there'll be a lot of financial pressure. And just at a time when it's really important that the regulators watch more closely, there's a lot of pressure on them to kind of back off, which is coming, unfortunately, from the industry. I think it's rather unwise. and there have been some congressional hearings, and they're going to be back up there. I think the important thing is that we maintain this level of oversight.
Could anyone here describe what the nuclear energy policy of the Clinton-Gore administration is?
Or any policy.
I don't think they have one. I don't think they have an energy policy.
Actually, during the first term of President Clinton, when Secretary Hazel O'Leary was Secretary of Energy, they did change the nuclear energy policy considerably. In previous times,
in which direction? In which direction?
In the direction of downgrading nuclear research. In the previous administration, there had been much more research on nuclear reactors, much more money going into these alternative, new designs of nuclear reactors, quite a bit of money in the integral fast reactor, which is a sodium-cooled
And what happened in the
reactor.
second term?
And in the first Clinton term, this research was definitely downgraded. Right. And research in renewables, wind energy, solar energy, and so on, fuel cells, which is now bearing fruit, was upgraded. But
what about
it had a reasonably good
What
program.
about in the second term?
In the second term, I think things have been a little more confused because they've had a lot of changes in the department, and I don't think, and there have been big changes from the first term. I don't think there's any policy in relation to global warming that's been adopted that I can detect.
Dale, what do you make of this administration?
I think the Clinton administration has given mixed signals on an energy policy. On the one hand, they'll say that the global warming is a concern, but on the other hand, they will not admit the values of nuclear power plays in global warming. And so I think the signals that this administration has given on an energy policy has been mixed and confusing. I would like, Ben, for a minute to get back to your issue on safety and risk. We basically have 5 ways that we generate electricity on a significant scale. 3 are fossil fuels. We have oil, natural gas, and coal. And we have our non-fossils, which are nuclear and hydro. All of those forms of electrical generation have some risk to them. But for that risk, we get the benefit of electricity. So no way, or none of the ways that we generate electricity is totally risk-free. But I think when you look at the safety aspects of the nuclear industry, that it's been quite good. As you indicated, there's been no deaths. And part of that has to do, I think, with Victor's former life when he was with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You know, there is
government is good for you.
There is an agency.
No, government. He's right about that.
There is an agency that does enhance to make sure that there are safe practices. So I think when you look as a consumer and you look at us needing additional electricity, that nuclear power is a viable, safe, economically way to generate electricity.
Okay, let's just, we're out of time. I want to just go quickly around the room. I'm going to put you in a time machine to 2025.
Right.
Where are we going to be on this issue of nuclear power?
Well, I think nuclear power is clearly on the decline. The rate of its decline is in question. It's going out in the United States, it's being phased out in countries in Europe. I think we need to make an investment in renewables and in efficiency. Our use of energy is miserably inefficient, even in the technologically advanced countries. And we need to create a direction where we're not trading off global warming on the one side and proliferation and terrible accident risks on the other side. Those are not comparable things.
Well, I think it depends a lot on this issue that you started off with, the global warming issue. If it's a big if now. If it turns out that this is really serious and we really are worried about it, we may be turning to nuclear power in a big way. If not, as things are going along now, it likely will get, at least in this country, phased out by 2025.
By 2025, there will not be a lot of changes because our infrastructure for electrical generation are massive systems, and you don't change those even in 25 years. So I think worldwide in 25 years, we'll have about 400 nuclear plants like we have today. We'll have some that will be built, some that will be shut down. But in general, 25 years, we will not see much difference. Being in the research area, I'm optimistic that we will have breakthroughs on solar photovoltaic cells where we can generate electricity from the sun for peaking. But I think for our basic electrical structure, by 2025, we will not see much change from where we are today.
Thank you, Arjun Makhijani, Dale Klein, and Victor Gilinsky. And thank you for Think Tank. I'm Ben Wattenberg.
We at Think Tank depend on your views to make our show better. Please send your questions and comments to New River Media, 1150 17th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20036, or email us at thinktank@pbs.org. To learn more about Think Tank, visit PBS online at www.pbs.org. And please let us know where you watch Think Tank.
This has been a production of BJW Incorporated in association with New River Media, which are solely responsible for its content.